My name is Alma Ruth Kingsley. I'm 79 years old. And last Thursday, I stood for 2 hours at the Fairbanks train station holding a suitcase, waiting for my son. He never came. The wind was sharp, slicing through my coat like paper. I held onto the metal bench and kept checking my flip phone, the one he gave me for emergencies only. At 3:12 p.m., I finally got a text. Running behind, Mom. Won't make it. Take a cab. I'll pay you back. He knew I couldn't afford a cab. He knew I had arthritis in both knees. He also knew I was the one who had quietly loaned him $84,000 over the past 6 years to build his dream. His outdoor equipment business. The one he ran with my late husband's savings. My name was still on the account, so I sat there for a while. Then I stood. Then I called for a taxi. And as I rode through the icy back roads, I stared out the window and whispered something I hadn't said in years. No more. That night, when I got home to my little apartment, I took out the old bank binder, the one I kept tucked behind the cereal boxes in the kitchen. I turned on the desk lamp, clicked open the pen, and logged into the shared account. I hovered over the freeze account button for maybe 5 seconds. Then I clicked it. That was at 7:03 p.m. By 7:09, my phone started ringing. First once, then twice. By midnight, he had called me 43 times. Left 9 voicemails. Most angry, 1 tearful, 1 threatening. But I didn't pick up. Because this wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect. And I may be old, but I am not invisible. I raised him on my back and my bent knees. Fed him when I had no appetite. Let him live in my home when he lost his first wife and couldn't manage the grief. Gave him everything. Silently. Softly. Like most mothers do. But silence is not loyalty. Silence is not love. Silence is how we get erased. And that night, as the cold pressed against my window and the phone buzzed over and over, I didn't feel regret. I felt relief. Because I was finally standing up. Not for revenge. For me. For Alma. And for every quiet grandmother waiting on a bench for someone who doesn't show up. To all the silent grandmothers out there, what would you have done in Alma's shoes? Like if this story moved you. Subscribe to hear what happens next, because Alma's story is just getting started. The porch light flickered on as I stood at the neighbor's door, dripping and shivering. It creaked open, and there she was, Miss Loretta Jean Duval. 86. Widow. Sharp as a tack and twice as funny. She took one look at me and said, "Ida Mae Templeton, you better get in here, for I call the sheriff and report a ghost on my porch." I stepped inside, my slippers squishing against the hardwood floor. Loretta wrapped me in a quilt and sat me down with a mug of hot chamomile. "Now tell me everything," she said. And I did. All of it. How I gave my daughter and her husband the deed to my family home when they were struggling. How I moved in when Bethany had the baby, thinking I'd be a help. How Curtis started treating me like hired help. How my daughter changed, short words, sharp glances. Like I was a burden, a shadow. Loretta's eyes narrowed. "They threw you out of a house you gave them?" I nodded. Said I overstayed. She clucked her tongue. "Lord help them when I'm done." I stayed the night in her guest room, staring at the ceiling fan and wondering how things had gotten so wrong. I raised Bethany on my own after her daddy died. Worked 2 jobs. Skipped meals so she could have lunch money. Sewed her prom dress by hand. And now I was a stranger in her house. But the next morning, as I stood in Loretta's garden sipping coffee, I remembered something. I never signed over the full rights. I still had my name on that deed. Curtis and Bethany didn't know that the final transfer was never completed. I held the legal right to reverse it. All I needed was a real estate attorney and my backbone. And let me tell you something, I may be old, but I still know how to stand up straight when I have to. So I did. I called a man named Charles Whitaker, a lawyer who helped with land disputes in Tulsa. He'd helped Loretta once fight off a shady company trying to buy her land for pennies. Charles listened. Asked for documents. I faxed them. 2 days later, he called. "Mrs. Templeton," he said, "you legally still own the property." I gripped the phone. What does that mean? It means if you wanna, you can ask them to vacate. Or sell it. Or move back in. You're still the legal deed holder. I didn't cry. But I did smile. They thought they could humiliate me and toss me aside like a piece of old furniture. But they forgot who built that home.
Who kept the lights on.
Who paid.
And now?
Now it was my turn. Not for revenge, but for respect. Have you ever felt unappreciated by the people you sacrificed everything for? Share your voice below. Someone might need to hear it. Like this chapter if you believe it's never too late to take back your power. The morning I returned to the house, the Oklahoma sky was wide and quiet, but my heart beat like thunder under my blouse. I didn't come with drama. I came with paper. Charles had drawn up everything I needed, proof that I still held majority ownership of the home, a notice of intent to reclaim residence, and a letter of legal standing. All neat, proper, and polite. But my face? It wasn't polite. It was tired. Disappointed.
Done.
Bethany opened the door with a startled look, holding the baby on her hip. Mama, what are you doing here? Curtis's voice followed from the living room. You back again? I didn't raise my voice.
I didn't yell.
I handed Bethany the envelope. What's this? She asked. My name. On your house. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Curtis snatched the papers from her, squinting at the legal terms like they were in Greek. You can't be serious, he muttered. Oh, I am, I said. You wanted me gone. I left. But you also said I overstayed. So now I'll show you what overpaid looks like. Bethany's face flushed. Mama, we didn't mean. You slammed a door in my face. I cut in. You told me I needed help. But the only thing I needed help with was remembering who I am. The baby cooed. I looked at her. My granddaughter. Innocent.
Pure.
Unaware of the storm brewing around her. I won't let you raise her thinking this is how we treat people who love us, I said softly. Curtis stepped forward, all puffed up. You're not kicking us out. I'm not, I said, pausing.
Yet.
They froze. I'm giving you a choice. We sit down, respectfully. We work something out. Or I let the sheriff explain it to you. Bethany looked down. Curtis cursed under his breath. I turned to leave. You have 48 hours to decide. As I walked back to Loretta's truck, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I stood taller than I had in years. Later that night, Charles called me. They reached out, he said. They're asking to talk. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I poured a cup of tea, sat on Loretta's porch, and watched the stars come out. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was reclaiming my dignity. But part of me wondered, were they sorry? Or just scared? Either way, I was ready. Have you ever had to confront someone who crossed the line, especially family? How did you stand your ground? Like this story, if you believe boundaries aren't cruelty, they're courage. 2 days later, we sat around the same dining table where I'd once braided Bethany's hair and iced birthday cupcakes. Now, that table was covered in legal documents, coffee mugs, and tension so thick it could choke a grown man. Curtis sat stiff, arms crossed. Bethany held the baby, eyes puffy, like she hadn't slept. I brought nothing but my purse and my spine. Charles, bless him, joined by speakerphone. Mrs. Templeton is not here to evict you yet, he began. But she has every right to. Let's be civil. Curtis rolled his eyes. We let her live here, for free for months. I leaned forward. I gave you the house.
He scoffed.
You didn't give it. It was an agreement. You're right, I said, calm as a preacher at sunrise. And the agreement isn't finished. Which means this house is still mine. Bethany looked up. Mama, you said you wanted to leave it for me. I did, I replied gently. But inheritance comes with honor. And y'all shut a door in my face while I stood in the rain. The baby let out a soft cry. Bethany, I said, do you remember when your daddy died? I worked graveyard shifts. I missed church for 3 years. I skipped meals so you could go on school trips. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I didn't do that, so one day you'd throw me out like some charity case. Curtis stayed quiet. Bethany looked crushed. I'm not here for revenge, I said. pulling out a paper. I'm offering a chance. You can stay, but you'll start paying me rent, and you'll put my name back on the mailbox as the co-owner. Curtis opened his mouth. I'm not asking, I said. I'm offering grace. One time. Charles added, it's fair. It keeps the peace. And it honors the woman who made this home possible. Silence. Finally, Bethany whispered, I'm sorry, Mama. It was the first honest thing I'd heard from her in months. Curtis muttered, well, think about it. You've got 1 week, I said, standing. And if I hear one more word about me overstaying, I'll have a for sale sign up before Sunday service. I walked out, baby's cry trailing behind me. My hands shook as I reached the truck. Loretta was waiting.
She didn't speak.
She just handed me a tissue. I didn't want it to be like this, I whispered. It never starts like this, she replied. But sometimes it ends exactly how it should. I looked back at the house. I had been a mother for so long, I forgot how to be a woman who owned.
But now?
I was both. And I was just getting started. What would you have said at that table? Have you ever had to put your foot down with someone you love? Tell us below. Like this story, if you believe forgiveness can still come with firm boundaries. Subscribe for next chapter, where an unexpected visitor brings news that could change Ida's future and the fate of the house. 3 days passed. No word from Bethany. No calls. No texts. Just silence, like they were hoping I'd give up if they ignored me long enough. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Then, on a quiet Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on Loretta's door. It wasn't Bethany. It was a man in a tan suit with polished shoes and a soft drawl. Said his name was Wallace Griggs. Real estate developer from Tulsa. Mrs. Templeton, he said, tipping his hat. I understand you're the current deed holder of 118 Oak Row? I nodded slowly. He smiled. I'd like to buy it. I blinked. Excuse me? The property's in a prime location. Quiet street. Upcoming commercial zoning. I'm authorized to offer you $475,000. My heart slammed against my ribs. I wasn't rich. I'd never been. That house was the biggest thing I'd ever owned. May I ask who gave you my name? I asked, steadying my voice. He hesitated. Then he said, your son-in-law, Curtis. It hit like a slap. He was trying to sell it. Behind my back. Pretend I'd signed off. Pretend I was too old to notice. I stepped out on the porch and shut the door behind me. Mr. Griggs, I said, let me make something real clear. That house isn't for sale.
Not now.
Not to you. Not to anyone who got my name from a man who doesn't own a single shingle on that roof. He raised a brow. You sure? It'd change your life. It already has, I said. Good day. I watched him walk back to his shiny SUV, mud clinging to his tires as he pulled away. Loretta stepped out behind me.
Trouble.
Opportunity pretending to be a blessing, I muttered. That night, I called Charles again. Curtis tried to sell the house, I told him. Without my consent. There was a pause. Then, do you want to take legal action? I thought of the baby, of Bethany, of the laughter that used to fill that kitchen. Then I thought of the rain, the slammed door, the way they looked at me like I was disposable. Yes, I said. I want to protect what's mine. All of it. The next day, Charles filed a cease and desist. He also issued a legal notice to Curtis warning him against attempting any sale, refinancing, or third-party offers on the property. But I didn't stop there. I called a builder I knew from church. Let's talk about a renovation, I said. Because if they didn't want me in their house, maybe I'd remind them whose name was on the foundation. To be continued. Speech balloon, would you have taken the offer from the developer, or done what Ida did? Let us know what you'd do in her shoes. Like this chapter if you believe protecting your worth is never wrong. Subscribe for next chapter, where Ida makes a powerful change that shakes the entire neighborhood and finally wakes her daughter up. 2 weeks later, the trucks rolled in. Yellow bulldozers. Cement mixers. A big white van that said, Restore and Revive Home Designs. Bethany ran out of the house in her bathrobe as the workers unloaded lumber and steel beams onto the front lawn. Mama, she yelled. What is going on? I stepped out of Loretta's truck in my Sunday best.
Hair done.
Nails painted. Clip-on pearls in place. I'm renovating, I said. Her eyes widened. Renovating what? This is our house. No, I said, holding up the signed court order. This is my property. And I'm building my own section. Right there. I pointed to the corner of the backyard, my backyard. Curtis stormed out, shirtless and fuming. You can't just bulldoze stuff. You don't even live here. I handed him the notice from the lawyer. This isn't a request, I said. It's a formality. Bethany looked between the paper and the construction crew now pulling up a patch of fencing. You're going to live here? Yes, I said calmly. On the land I own, in the house I paid for, near the granddaughter I love. But I won't be coming through your front door again. Curtis swore under his breath. Bethany covered her mouth like she was about to cry. Mama, I never wanted it to get like this. But you let it, I said. The workers waved as the demo began. The ground shook as they started leveling the earth. By evening, the foundation was set. A few of the neighbors came by, curious. I told them the truth. I was building a mother-in-law suite. A beautiful little home right in the backyard of the house I once gave away. And I would live there, peacefully, but with boundaries. Because sometimes peace isn't quiet. Sometimes it's steel and concrete and the sound of saws in the morning. Curtis kept quiet that night. Bethany came by, holding the baby. Her face was pale. Mama, people are talking. Let them, I said, rocking the baby. They always do. Curtis says you're embarrassing us. I looked her in the eye. I gave you everything. And when I needed you most, you gave me the sidewalk. Now, I'm just giving myself a roof. She left without arguing. That night, Loretta and I sat on lawn chairs watching the stars above the growing frame of my new place. You sure you want to live that close to them? She asked. I nodded. I want my granddaughter to grow up knowing where she came from. And Bethany? She'll have to watch, day by day, nail by nail, as I rise again. And I did. The woman they tried to erase was becoming someone impossible to ignore. To be continued. Speech balloon, what do you think of Ida's decision to build her own home on the property? Bold or too close for comfort? Tell us in the comments. Like this story, if you believe healing sometimes begins by rebuilding. Subscribe to this channel. Get ready for what happened next, where Bethany's true motives are finally exposed and a letter from the past changes everything. The walls of my new home were halfway up when the letter came. It was stuffed in my mailbox, no stamp, no return address. Just my name written in shaky handwriting I recognized immediately. Bethany. I sat on the porch of Loretta's house, the sound of hammers echoing behind me, and unfolded it with trembling hands. Mama, it began. I don't know how to fix what I broke. I keep replaying that day, slamming the door, saying those awful words. I sounded like Curtis. That's not who I want to be. But I said it. I threw you away like you were furniture I didn't need anymore. Truth is, I've been lost. Ever since the baby came. Ever since we took the house. Curtis made it feel like we earned it. But deep down, I knew it was yours. And I think that's why I was so angry. Because every time you looked at her, your granddaughter, I saw how much I failed at loving you the way you loved me. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see you now. I'm sorry. I stared at the paper. I didn't cry. But I did feel something crack open in my chest. Not enough to forget, but maybe enough to hope. That night, I sat in the new kitchen framework, stars peeking through the ceiling beams. I thought about the Bethany I raised. The girl who used to hold my hand walking to school. The girl who cried when I missed her dance recital because of work. Was she still in there? Or had life, and Curtis, and bitterness hardened her for good? The next morning, I showed the letter to Charles. You're thinking of letting them back into your life? He asked gently. I'm thinking, I replied, that forgiveness might be harder than paperwork. He smiled. And a lot more permanent. By week's end, the roof was on. My little cottage in the backyard, warm wood, big windows, a front porch swing. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. On Sunday, I saw Bethany standing near the fence, holding the baby. She didn't say a word, just watched as I watered my new rose bushes. Then the baby reached for me. That tiny hand, that innocent face. I walked over slowly, took her in my arms. Bethany whispered, "She misses you." "She shouldn't have had to," I said, not unkindly. Silence settled between us. "I read your letter," I added. "It doesn't fix things, but it helps." She nodded.
Curtis didn't come around that week.
I heard through the grapevine he was trying to convince Bethany to sell the house again. But this time, she told him no. Something was shifting. And it wasn't just the walls. It was the foundation of us. I wasn't ready to move back in. But I was ready to stand close. Just enough to be seen. And one step closer to being heard. Can you forgive someone who treated you like Ida was treated? Why or why not? Let us hear your heart in the comments. I woke up to sirens. Blue and red lights flashed through my new cottage window. I rushed outside, still in my robe, heart pounding, and saw Curtis in handcuffs. Bethany was sobbing on the porch. 2 officers stood by their cruiser. And in the driveway, a man in a suit held a clipboard. The officer nodded at me. "Ma'am, you the owner of this property?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. "I'm Ida Templeton. What's going on?" The suited man stepped forward. Curtis Templeton attempted to commit real estate fraud. Again. He tried to refinance the house with forged documents, your signature included. My breath caught. "He said you'd given him power of attorney," the officer added. "But we called your lawyer. And your name is still on everything." Bethany dropped to her knees. Curtis shouted as they loaded him into the cruiser. "You old witch. You ruined everything. You think she's gonna save you? She owns you." But Bethany didn't even look at him. She looked at me. And for the first time in years, I saw her, not angry, not proud, just a little girl again, finally realizing who really stood by her. I walked over, knelt beside her. "I tried to warn you," I whispered. "I know," she cried. "I should have listened. He said he'd take care of us, but all he ever wanted was control." I nodded, then stood up and turned to the officer. "Will you need me to testify?" "Your lawyer said yes. But you'll be protected." I exhaled slowly. Later that afternoon, the neighborhood buzzed with news. Some whispered. Others stopped by to hug me. I wasn't angry. I was free. Bethany stayed with me that night in my little cottage, curled up on the pull-out sofa, baby asleep on her chest. "I'm going to get a job," she said. "I'll pay rent. I'll make it right." "You'll start with honesty," I said. "We'll figure out the rest." She looked around. "This place that's beautiful." "It's peace," I said. She nodded. "I want peace too." I kissed her forehead. "Then stop chasing people who promise it. And build it yourself." By spring, Curtis was gone, facing charges no longer part of our lives. Bethany got work at the library. She paid me what she could. And every Sunday, we made pancakes and danced with the baby in the kitchen. Not everything was perfect. But I didn't want perfect. I wanted earned. One morning, a local news reporter asked if I'd be willing to share my story. "How does a 75-year-old woman end up saving her home, her family, and herself?" she asked. I smiled into the camera. "I stopped waiting for rescue," I said. "And I remembered who bought the bricks. Now, the fence between our homes isn't a wall. It's a gate. And every time it swings open, it reminds me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I wasn't overstaying. I was standing my ground. Because sometimes, the one they try to bury is the root that holds everything up." What did this story mean to you? Have you ever been underestimated, only to rise stronger than before? Share your story in the comments. Like this if you believe grandmothers deserve more than respect. They deserve legacy. Subscribe for more powerful true stories like this one, where betrayal turns into courage and silence becomes strength. A year had passed. The house was still standing, but so was I. Bethany had found her rhythm as a mother and a librarian. The baby, now a wobbly toddler named Grace, spent half her days on my hip, following me from my flower beds to the kitchen like a little duckling. Curtis? No longer a chapter in our lives. He pled guilty to fraud and left Oklahoma without a goodbye. I never said his name out loud again. Bethany didn't either. One summer morning, I was watering the begonias outside my cottage when a letter arrived. Not from a lawyer. Not from Bethany. From a woman named Clara Jennings, a reporter with the Oklahoma Tribune. I read about your story, she wrote. Not from the headlines, but from your granddaughter's school fundraiser page. The teacher called you the most resilient grandmother they'd ever met. I'd like to meet you. Your story isn't just news, it's a legacy. I hesitated. I wasn't one for attention. But then I thought about all the women like me, quiet, forgotten, underestimated. Maybe it was time one of us spoke up. Clara visited a week later. Young, sharp, respectful. She asked questions no one ever had before. What was it like to give everything to a daughter and have her turn on you? I took a deep breath. It was like tending a garden all your life and then finding weeds where roses used to bloom.
But you don't stop planting.
You just change the soil. What would you tell women in your shoes? I looked at her with a soft smile. Don't confuse silence with peace. Don't confuse endurance with weakness. You are allowed to take up space, even in the home you built. The article came out in print 2 weeks later. The root that held them up, Ida Templeton's story of strength, betrayal, and rebirth. It spread faster than I expected. Women from as far as New Mexico and Georgia sent letters. Some even called Loretta's landline just to say thank you. One note stuck with me. Dear Ida, I was kicked out of my daughter's home last Thanksgiving. I thought I was alone. Thank you for showing me I'm not. I'm building a guest cottage in my backyard now, and I call it the Templeton. That made me laugh, but it also made me cry. Bethany framed the article and hung it in the living room. It's a reminder, she said, of how far we fell and how hard you climbed. Grace, now 3, pointed at it every morning and said, "That's Grandma's face." Yes, it was. And it wasn't just any face. It was the face of a woman who lived loudly when they tried to silence her. That fall, I hosted our first real family Thanksgiving in my cottage. No Curtis. No fighting. Just food, music, laughter, and a table full of faces that knew what survival looked like. As we joined hands to pray, Bethany whispered, "Mama, I'm proud of you." I squeezed her hand. I'm proud of me, too. And maybe that's the lesson. Sometimes the comeback isn't about revenge. It's about becoming whole again. On your own terms. With your name still on the deed. Speech Balloon, what was your favorite moment in Ida's story? Has this inspired you or someone you know to speak up or reclaim their worth? Let us know below. Like and share this chapter if you believe quiet women are powerful women. The world just hasn't learned to listen yet. Subscribe for more real-life inspired stories where age isn't a weakness, it's a weapon of wisdom.